Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope and at times humour. On the 24th of January 2020, Andrew McGinley came home to find his three little kids, Conor, who was 9, Darragh, who was 7 and Carla, who was 3, had tragically died. Now, it was a news story. I think it's fair to say that shocked and saddened all of the country. It still stays with a lot of people today. Andrew is joining me this week to talk about those three kids, Conor, Darragh and Carla, and how he continues their legacy 5 years on. Andrew, thanks for coming in today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can I start by asking you about Conor, Darragh and Carla and what sort of kids they were?
They were, it's like everybody who talks about their kids will say they were amazing and they were great kids. But they were. I've set up the Conor's Clips YouTube channel. That was the project I did in memory of Conor. And anybody who looks at that can see how happy and joyful and the kids were. And I would always say that they had a great sense of humour. Myself and the kids, I think we were just 4 absolute messers. And Conor's Clips was initially supposed to be little short comedy clips. Conor had I'll always describe them sort of like this with their sense of humour. Conor would say something and walk away, and it would take you 3 or 4 seconds. You'd realise that was funny. Darragh was more slapstick comedy. He would do something, and then Carla was just cheeky, sort of funny. So they were just 3 really funny kids. Conor was, again, I had no worries about Conor. He was he was well read. He liked school, and I just saw anything that Conor wanted to do, he'd be able to turn his hand to. Carla, I always thought she would just have everybody wrapped around her finger, and I had no worries about Carla. Darragh was a really sociable kid, and I just thought he will probably, drop out of 2 colleges and be doing this and doing that and sleeping on somebody's sofa, and then eventually he would meet somebody down the pub, have a chat, and they would come up with some idea and he would be a millionaire. He was just that kind of a really sociable, and nothing would get him down. And yeah, so that's the kind of nature of the 3 of them. But they got on like a house on fire. Again, there's a great clip on Conor's Clips of I'm in in one room with Carla, and she's putting on her fairy wings and she has her magic wand. I think I said to her, listen, do you want to go in and show the guys? And she goes into the other room where Conor and Darragh were, and she waves her wand and says, I'm turning you into frogs. Now, I would know that a lot of bigger brothers would turn around and go, yeah, right, get out, we're doing whatever. But the 2 boys start jumping around like frogs. And I just saw, every time I see that, it was like, it wasn't that they loved the idea of her coming in and turning them into frogs, and they could show off as being frogs. So they got on like a house on fire. They really, and you can see that, and it's not just me saying that about my kids. You can see that in Conor's Clips.
In the Conor's Clips, how happy, and full of life they were.
Yeah.
And also your relationship with them. You can see how you were friends. It was very easy.
Yeah, we were sort of big messers. I'll never forget, I think it was about 2 weeks before they died. They'd gone up to have a Friday night shower, and I had a couple of these big, I think they're called bath sheets, the extra large bath towels. And the 2 boys came down wearing them, and they were sort of mine, and so it meant I had no big towel for football the next day. So I said, right, because you've used my towels now, we're going towel shopping tomorrow. And the two boys were going, we're not going towel shopping. So I'd come home from football anyway, and Darragh actually had a birthday party, I think, that he was going to. So I said to Conor, come on, we're going towel shopping. And he goes, I'm not going towel shopping. I says, come on, we'll go towel shopping. And he goes, no, not going. And he was smirking at me, and I says, it'll be fun, come on. And it was basically me and Conor went over, and we ended up going over to Liffey Valley. And there's a big shop there, department store, with and it had basically a wall of towels. And we were looking, and I started waving at the assistant. I says, right, we're going to have a bit of fun here. And he's looking at me going, what are you doing? And I says, I'm going to ask for a colour that, see, do they have it? Like, and he goes, well, there's all our towels there. And he's looking at the assistant. She's making her way over, and I'm there. They're just ready to start messing. And the assistant comes over, and I says, listen, we're after doing up the bathroom at home and trying to get towels to match it. And she goes, oh, yeah, what colour is that? And I kind of went, couplurge was the first word that came into my head. And she's going, what? Couplurge. And Conor is just looking at me, and he's like, you could just see he's beginning to panic a bit, like, what's going to happen here? And then she says to me, what colour is, what sort of shade is couplurge? And I had thought this through because I was winging it, and I went, it's kind of a purpley red blue. So all I had visions of this shop assistant looking at the two of us going, what have you done to your bathroom? and so, no, she was going, no, we have purple, we have blue. And just, I remember just Conor's face looking at me going, I can't believe you did that. Yeah. So eventually we said, we'll just go with white. It'll fit in. But that was just the kind of messing that we just used to get up to. And they were just, they were jokers. And particularly Conor. Conor had a very subtle sense of humour, and and some of the ideas, I still have the notepad at home, because when he asked me to set up a YouTube channel, I said, well, what are you going to put on it? And he said, I'm not sure, what do you think? And I said, well, you've got a great sense of humour, why don't you do little comedy skits, and you have us all, we can all take a part. And so he said, yeah, that's a great idea. And he had a notepad, and he started writing ideas, and I wrote a few ideas, and I said, so right, we build up a bank of about 20 ideas, and then we'll start filming, and we'll start editing, and then we'll add more ideas, and we'll have a sort of a rolling sort of sequence, and then we can start uploading, and if we upload 1 or 2 a week or whatever. So that was the plan, but we never got past the that was I think,
it's almost like there's a reason why you started doing those films, though.
Yeah, I had to put up, but all I had was clips of the kids, so that's what I put on Conor's clips. But it's, for me, it's his YouTube channel.
And it's lovely to have as well. Yeah. Can you talk to us about that day in January 24th? It was a Friday.
Yeah, I'd been away. We'd taken on a new contract at work, and I was down. I went on the Thursday, and I was away overnight. But I'd been ringing back, and then I was coming back up on the Friday, and as people heard at the trial, there was phone calls, and they were normal phone calls. In fact, a friend of mine, his father had passed away, and the wake was on that evening. So as I was driving back up, I'd rang to say, listen, will I call in and collect the kids? And I knew they would be good at the wake, there wouldn't be any bother. I just said, call in and collect them and bring them with me, and then go and do the big shop. We'd always do the big shop on the Friday. And she had said, no, it's fine, you go on ahead to the wake. But sure, at that stage, the kids were dead at that stage. So I'd gone to the wake, and started making my way back out home. And one of the neighbours rang me to say that she had collapsed outside. Deirdre Morley had collapsed outside. So when I got back to the house, the ambulance, the fire brigade, and the guards were already there. But nobody had gone into the house, and so I went into the house, and I found their bodies. It was Conor. I found first in the front room. you know, and I was down beside him, and I, you know, cradled him and was looking for signs of life. And because the ambulance was outside, a paramedic came in, and she sort of, you know, stand aside. So she took over, and just within seconds she looked at me and she started crying. And then I know there was, I think it was one of the fire officers was there, and he said, "Listen, you know, you need to please don't touch the body." He obviously knew, I suppose, from experience, that there would be the Gardaí would need, and the Gardaí, I think, came in there at that stage. And then, of course, I wanted to see Darragh and Carla, and one of the firemen had gone upstairs and had obviously seen their bodies upstairs. But I wanted to go up, and so there was a bit of a wrestling match on the stairs between me trying to get up, them trying not to let me up. And then there was a voice behind me that I subsequently found out it was the fire chief. And he said, let him go. And they let me go, and I went up, and their bodies were upstairs. And then I suppose there's detectives arrive and everything else, and you're talking to them. And a while later, your house becomes a crime scene. And so I had to leave the house. And I remember standing outside the house, and I can safely say I was at rock bottom. That had somebody told me that a meteor was coming to destroy the earth, I would have went fine. Yeah, I'm cool with that. And then the thing that just lifted me that millimetre off the ground was I never got to help Conor do his YouTube channel. And that drove me on, that I had to do it. I had to carry on. I had to fight all the dark thoughts and everything else, that I had to do it.
And is that what drove you? Because in the immediate aftermath, you know, when somebody dies, let alone, you know, your three small kids in really tragic circumstance, because your whole life in that moment was gone. Your family life as you knew it.
I feel I lost everybody. That day. Yeah.
How do you get up the next day? How do you plan their
Conor's clips? Yeah. That was the first, and I was driven. I knew then I'd have to do a project for Carla and a project for Darragh, and but that was, I just remember, it's that sort of Kodak moment where you're standing, you can just picture, and it's frozen in time, and I can still picture it when I close my eyes, of looking at the house, and the house was still bathed in blue lights from the emergency vehicles and the like, and just looking and going, I need to set up Conor's clips. And that drove me on. And then was, I guess, you know, in all of that, and all the what was happening outside the house, and I guess neighbours, then the realisation, and then the community, you know, as word goes out, was there a time where you just actually had that moment that this is actually really happening to me? Or did it feel like this outer... Yeah, it does. I was standing there. There was people coming up, and I honestly don't know who I talked to or anything like that. It was only months later when, with a crime, there's a Garda liaison officer who's appointed. And I remember, like, after discovering the kids' bodies, that the detectives were in the house and they were talking to me. So it wasn't months later when the Garda liaison said, well, that was questioning you. Like, we knew you hadn't done anything, but you're still being questioned. Everybody's a suspect until... And it's just a weird... It is out of body. Like... But
that in itself is a horrendous thought.
It is, subsequently. You know? But I didn't realise at the time that I was. Wow. And then that they'd gone and spoken to neighbours and every, you know, and you're just going, you know, it doesn't seem real, And I remember thinking to myself, this doesn't happen to people like us. Like, this doesn't happen in Ireland. It was surreal. It was just... But the first few weeks and months is the stuff that you don't remember. And
it's like a blur.
yeah. And that... like, my sister would say, oh, do you remember that? And I go, no. You know.
The next few months then, we went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And at a time, I guess, when above anything else, you needed your friends, your family, everybody around you.
Yeah. It was difficult without a doubt, but it was difficult for everybody. I remember we had that the funeral was at the end of January, so we had about 6 weeks before the lockdown came, and in that time I managed to set up the YouTube channel and started putting videos up for Conor's Clips. And the person who helped me set up Conor's Clips had said to me, you should set up social media. Just not... I said, well, I have no intention. I just wanted a YouTube channel. He said, but to protect the name. Because if people start looking at Conor's Clips, they could set up on Twitter or Facebook as Conor's Clips and start putting out posts about anything. So I said, okay, we'll set them up. So we set them up. And I didn't really have any intention of doing anything until the same person said, oh, well, why don't you send a tweet that this is who you are and this is your legacy project for Conor? So I did. And I think by lockdown, I had something like 50 followers on Twitter, and that was in about 10 on Instagram for Conor's Clips. And lockdown was announced, and I thought to myself, how am I going to get through this? But after the funeral, a few letters had come in from just people like just strangers, I suppose, who had written to me, and some of them, there were really nice letters that had sort of come in. And I thought, you know something, if 50 people follow me on Twitter, if 10 of them wrote to me and I wrote back, sheesh, wouldn't that be great? That would keep me... So I kind of put it out, listen, lockdown coming, and you know, I got lovely letters, and if anybody did want to write to me, then that'd be great. And a friend of mine, Fikra O'Keeneth, who's with RTE, had seen my tweet. I play football with Fikra on Saturday mornings. And he saw the tweet and he says, can I retweet that? And I had no idea what a retweet was. I was new to so whatever. And he retweeted it, and he had 5,000 followers. So next thing, it got picked up by press, and I think I have about 10,000 letters up in my attic. And I did. I read every letter, where I think people put in addresses, and like some were people really put their heart into what they wrote to me. And if they did their address, I tried to write back. I couldn't write back to everybody, but it took me to the end of May. It was literally every couple of days, every 2 or 3 days, the postman would arrive with a box of letters. Wow. Full box.
And did that make you, did that give you some sort of comfort?
There was some lovely...
Did you find it reliving everything?
No, because they weren't... there were a lot of people about their own experiences, and I think afterwards I tweeted, like, I'm getting lovely stuff, and there's some really funny letters, and I think people then were writing about their own funny experiences to try and cheer me up or something. But there were some absolutely beautiful letters. And then writing back to people. So that kind of got me through lockdown. And then I did a lot of going back to nature. Like I went back kayaking. I used to kayak when I was younger. So I went back out on the Grand Canal and the Royal Canal and hiking up around the hills. And that's where, if anybody does follow me on Twitter or Instagram, Conor's Clips, they'll see I often encounter 3 deer up there. Yeah,
I saw that.
And I'm not a believer in signs. I'm not, but you can't help
ignore
but
it.
not. Yeah, you can't ignore it because, like, let's say I go up 10 times, I might see a herd of deer once every 100 times I go up there. It's mostly 3. 9 out of 10 times I'll see 3 deer with their heads poking out. And I look around to see, is there a 4th or a 5th or 6th? No, there's 3 of them. looking at me. And yeah,
It's funny because, well, you know, people that have said on this podcast that they don't, you know, believe in signs, and they sort of, you know, but there is always one sign that sort of does keep coming back.
Yeah, and that's the one for me. I mean, ask me, the children died just over 5 years ago, but ask me 5.5 years ago, would I ever go to a medium? I would have said no. I would have dismissed it completely, but I ended up going, and she told me about a dozen things that only me and the kids could know. And I'm very logical and practical, and I can't understand that. So the only way that makes sense to me is that in some way she's able to communicate with the spirit of the kids, because she has literally told me things that nobody could know. And I don't understand that. I can't. Me being the practical person I am, can't make any sense of it other than to believe that there's a channel there that she's able to tap into.
Yeah, because I was reading as well that very sadly you lost your mum
in
the last couple of years, and you were saying that, you know, she's now there with them.
Yeah, that's what the medium told me. Yeah. And it's funny with grief. I mean, with my mum was, you know, she was in her 80s. But you almost anticipate the loss of a parent, and to be able, there's almost, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard on my dad, it's hard on my sisters, my brothers, but you can accept, I think, the death of somebody who has lived a whole and happy and wholesome life, and who has reached a certain age. But I think it's anybody who has lost somebody at a younger age in different circumstances other than somebody dying from old age, it's difficult.
Well, I think especially with kids as well.
Yeah, like there's that saying, you should never have to bury a child, and I've had to bury 3.
And that's 3 birthdays every year you have to do. It's Father's Day.
Father's Day and Christmas Day are probably the hardest, rather than the birthdays. Because Father's Day then is everywhere, as is Christmas. Do you know, you could almost get away with just heading out on their birthdays and nobody knowing that it's their birthdays. But you go out on Father's Day and it's all families out and about, you know.
Yeah. And, you were speaking as well recently about reclaiming Christmas. Was that conscious thing to do, or was it more organic?
We all loved Christmas. I used to always try and get the Christmas tree up at the end of November. And I used to always say, I can't do it like in December, I'm working those 2 weekends. I hadn't worked weekends in 20 years. So I'd always get the Christmas tree up as early as I could, and Christmas was... I worked abroad for a good few years, and I always came home for Christmas. So I was always a Christmas type person. More than, I don't even really celebrate my birthday, or birthdays weren't a big thing for me, but Christmas was kind of a time that I loved celebrating. And then I think I probably got the kids involved in being big Christmas fans. And but it's difficult to reclaim it. I'm thinking now. I've tried a few different things, but I think maybe next year I might go away somewhere or do something different again. Yeah. But I was always a bigger fan probably of Christmas than my own birthday or anything like that. So.
Well, I think it's. I think it's a time of year people either love or hate, and it's very difficult when you've loved it, I think, to then, when you're going through a difficult time, to hate it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I'd ever hate Christmas, but it's an extremely difficult time. But I see, you end up getting a few mantras into your head, and one is the kids wouldn't want me to be sad, and so I try not to be. And I know they knew how much I loved Christmas. So I think they would want me to enjoy it as best I could. They'd want me to enjoy it, but it's hard to,
Conor would be 14.
9, 7 and 3. There'll always be 9, 7 and 3.
With...
People often ask me, what age would they be now? And I just know, 9, 7 and 3.
But they're friends that they would have had.
Yeah.
Do you see them?
Occasionally, yeah. It was... I happened to be over in Sagard one day, and you got Sagard, Rathcoole and Newcastle. We lived in Newcastle. Kids went to school in Rathcoole. We used to live in Sagard. But I happened to be over in Sagard, and just out of the corner of my eye, there was a few kids who were laughing and messing around and joking and being a bit boisterous, and I was thinking, oh, gang of young fellas, and I'm heading down towards them, and next thing they all stopped, and it was, oh, Mr. McGinley. And I was like, I couldn't remember the names, but they were all nearly the same height as me now. So it is strange seeing other kids grow.
Does that make you angry though, when you see other kids reaching milestones, doing things, you know?
Do you know what makes me very angry? And I read something this morning about is people abusing their children or neglecting their children in cases where, couple up in court for, neglecting their child and the child passed away. I get so angry. But no, when I see their friends growing up and getting older, I mean, that's just the way it is. So it's not anger, but there's a sadness about it. But I'd never not want to see their friends. And we have a charity event coming up now for Darragh.
Yes.
And both Conor and Darragh's friends are getting involved in it.
Oh,
and it'll be lovely to see them.
Wow.
And I love the idea that they still think of Conor and Darragh,
Yeah. Because it's hard for the kids as well to understand, I guess, what happened.
I carry great guilt about the conversations that parents would have had to have with their kids. Like the friends of Conor, those parents. Do you know?
Well, you shouldn't feel guilty.
I know. But you carry guilt always, that you're supposed to be there for your kids and stuff like that. So you'll always, and no matter how many times that people will say, you shouldn't, you can't, you just do. That's just the way
I
it
know we can't talk too much about various aspects of this, but is there something you'd like to see changed that you can talk about? That
well, we're still waiting on the inquest to happen. There's a delay which is out of my hands and out of the coroner's hands, I believe. But the coroner, I understand, is trying to make headway to work around those delays and try and resolve what's delaying the inquest. So I'm hoping out of the inquest there would be a number of recommendations. I believe as a co-parent that I can see that decisions were made about Conor, Darragh and Carla by clinicians, and they had no right to make those decisions about my children without my input. So I would believe that there needs to be a right for a co-parent to be fully informed, fully advised and fully supported if any decision is being made for a patient that could impact the children. I believe that. Patient confidentiality is another one that I struggle with, again because of decisions being made about me and the children that we should have been. I should have been informed, should have been advised and should have been supported. Nobody has a right to make decisions about that can impact your life without you knowing or being advised or supported. So I'm hoping with the inquest that there will be, better support for co-parents, that there will be protection for children, because I don't think that the Children First legislation that's been in place, I think since 2015, 2016, was was what's the word? Was given any sort of regard. The Children First legislation speaks about the safety and welfare of children being paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't see how it was in our case. I don't believe that many of the clinicians adhered to that legislation. So the inquest, I think, will be important, because I've campaigned for change with politicians, and I just don't think they want to touch it. And you just wonder, it's statistically it's maybe 1, 2, 3 children a year that whose lives are taken. So it's for me, one life is too many. But it's, I mean, if you stopped somebody in the street now and asked them to name family names that were impacted by this, they might get our name, the McGinley children, but
I think
they wouldn't remember other children. They wouldn't. Like, it wasn't until after the kids died I spoke to Una Butler, and I honestly don't remember her case being in the papers. Probably because I looked at it and went, and
that's
moved
sad.
on.
Yeah. You are doing amazing things to keep Conor, Darragh and Carla's legacies alive. And you were, obviously, we know about Snowman for Carla, which is the yearly.
Yeah. I'd love to be able
gorgeous.
to do more for the Snowman for Carla. I'd love to get a chocolate snowman in a carton that could be coloured in. So if there's any major retailer listening to this who can help me make that come through, that would be brilliant. But yeah, it's in the Independent every year in around November time, and it's just purely, she loved snowmen, she loved colouring, so it's a lovely little competition that they support me on.
And then, as Darragh did, which has raised huge amounts.
Yeah,
for charity, like over 200,000.
Over 300,000
Wow.
at the moment. We've helped just over 200 projects, and the idea behind it is to help clubs, groups and societies all across the country to get people involved, as Darragh did, because he was involved in everything. As I said before, he was a real social kid. He got involved in everything. He was in the hurling, he was in the GA, he was in the soccer, he was in the athletics. He just loved being around other people. Conor was in the soccer team and the drama group, and Darragh had just joined him in the drama group. So Darragh again was like, oh yeah, there's people there. He was going. So it's helping clubs and groups and societies to get their communities involved, as Darragh did. So we're doing a fundraising walk. We last year we came up with Walking the Walk with, as Darragh did, and we walked from Mullingar to Maynooth. This year we're starting off from Mullingar and walking out to Nonny Quinn's pub out in Thomastown and walking back. It's a 30-kilometre walk. I have so much support from the likes of Sodexo, who do workplace services, and A-Space, who are providing a toilet trailer. You don't realise how important a toilet trailer is until you're walking along the stretch off the Royal Canal without a toilet. There's just so many people who step forward to support us on that. We have about, I think it's about 120 people registered at the moment. We can, we have a maximum of 200, so if anybody else would like to register, we're at www.asdarraghdid.ie, and it's DARRAGH. And it's a fundraising walk, so we'll be sending out communications to everybody who's registered and how to set up fundraisers and how they can best support us. But the money we get in will go to, communities all across the country, and some of the projects we've done are just, I love going out to them and see, and whether it be, we did the Wanderers GAA club here in Dublin, over 100 years of GAA history, and never had a camogie team. So we were able to fund their first camogie team. So now young girls who can now be part of the club to play camogie that they weren't able to join in before. The Haven Hub in Limerick, we brought young men together to talk about depression and suicide. It was a facility that they hadn't had before to bring them together, so we were able to do that. Belmullet tidal pool over in Mayo, we did. They were only able to open the tidal pool during certain hours because they had a lack of lifesavers, people with the life-saving qualifications. So we training courses, so that meant more people could use the facility and get involved with swimming classes. And so there's just so many just really wonderful projects and I'm just delighted that we're able to do that in Darragh's name.
Yeah.
And then Darragh did sponsors the Snowman for Carla colouring competition.
So
and then it gives me something to put on Conor's clips social media. So it's the three of them are still...
Yeah. So as you said at the beginning, they were as thick as thieves.
Yeah.
So
still are.
They still are.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you very much for telling your story. I think you're incredible. And
when my friends say that to me, I always go, was I not always incredible?
Well, you still are.
But
Thank
you honestly, you don't know what you would do in the circumstances. So I think what I've ended up doing is just rolling up my sleeves and getting on with stuff. But if one thing I say helps somebody else or helps one person, then that's great.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.